I want to ask you a couple of quick questions about measles because we're currently experiencing a measles outbreak that has resulted in the deaths of 2 children and 712 cases in 24 states and climbing, unfortunately. Last week, Health and Human Services Secretary RFK Jr., who has a well-documented history of vaccine skepticism, offered qualified support of the MMR vaccine, stating that, quote, people should get the measles vaccine, but the government should not mandate those. What is your response to not only that statement, but his history of vaccine skepticism and how he has handled this measles outbreak from the beginning?
Well, I'd prefer not to go into any specific comments about any particular leaders. Let me just say the story about measles is this is an incredibly important illness worldwide. People don't realize that last year more than 100,000 died of measles worldwide, most of them children. This is not a disease to take lightly. And yet we have what many people would say probably the most wonderful vaccine of the whole list against measles because it is so effective if you get 2 doses. And it, for many people, seems to be lifelong. Many vaccines, as we know, require boosters. Measles doesn't and generally do so, although it's not a bad idea if you're at high risk to make sure your immunity is still there. To have now here in the United States, this outbreak with, as you say, more than 700 cases and 2 young girls under the age of 10 losing their life to this is not something that should happen when we have this vaccine as such an effective preventive. So I would say the public health message ought to be to parents, you don't want to let your child be unprotected against a potentially lethal disease any more than you would want your child to be rolling around in the back seat of your car without being restrained in a car seat if they're at that age. This is just part of taking care of what you can do to be sure your children have the chance to live a healthy life. Unfortunately, starting a long time ago, this notion that somehow the MMR vaccine might be attached to the risk of autism has continued to reverberate in certain quarters, even though that has been resoundingly disproved by multiple studies involving tens of thousands of individuals. Let's be clear, measles vaccine does not cause autism. Period. That's been established. We don't need to keep looking at that. It's done. And yet that is still out there as a concern. I do think it's unfortunate that there are voices that continue to cast doubt on the safety of a vaccine that otherwise can save a lot of lives. And what's happening right now really should not be happening in the United States of America.